안녕하세요, ninth graders. This is lecture 5 on the coronavirus. So today we're going to start off by just asking a question about your own worries about the coronavirus. So when you think of the coronavirus, what do you worry about? And then how do you deal with those worries? So just go ahead and take a couple minutes to write out your answer. This is also going to be your homework, so if you want to actually take a couple more minutes and open up Schoology or open up a Google Doc so you can submit that, you can go ahead and do that as well. When you're ready to begin class, just go ahead and hit pause, or rather hit play, so you can continue on with the lesson. So our objectives for today are to apply our knowledge of the coronavirus to refugee populations and to explain how refugees are more vulnerable to the coronavirus. And ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to just look at what a lot of you had to say in terms of refugees and the coronavirus. Some of our keywords for today are going to be multi-generational. That means more than one generation. So if we have child and parents and grandparents and great-grandparents together, that's an example of a multi-generational group. Lack. This word is just going to come up again and again in our presentation. So when you lack something, you don't have enough of it. Reliable. When something is reliable, you can depend on it. It's trustworthy. And finally, this is a very long-term marginalization. When you are marginalized, that means that you are treated as someone who's unimportant. You are not someone that is the focus of whatever is happening. So I wanted to talk about what makes refugees more vulnerable to the coronavirus. This was our writing topic yesterday, and I'm going to draw a lot of these answers from your writing on this topic. The students who wrote about this topic wrote very clear, well-written pieces that were very focused on exactly how refugees are vulnerable to the coronavirus. So I really appreciated those answers, and I'm going to share them now. So number one, poverty. Lots of people talked about how poverty is a huge issue with refugees, and this makes sense. If you're impoverished, like first of all, you're not going to be able to have access to quality health care. If you don't have any money, maybe you can't go to the doctors, maybe you can't go to the hospital. In addition to poverty, or I guess another element of poverty involves food. First of all, if you don't have money, maybe you're not eating well, maybe you don't have enough money for food, and if that's the case, then you are weaker, you're more vulnerable to viruses. In addition, in the United States, people are kind of stockpiling food right now. They're buying lots of extra food so they can practice social distancing, so they don't have to go to the store all the time. But if you don't have a lot of money, then that's not something that you could do. Another problem is multi-generational family structure. So a lot of times in these refugee communities, you have maybe 3 generations under one roof. You have grandparents, you have parents, and you have children all living together. And a lot of times these are big families, and then so there are just that many more opportunities for people within the family to bring home a virus, and for that virus to spread throughout that family and affect especially the vulnerable older people in that family. Next, cramped housing. In the background of our PowerPoint, you can see a Karen refugee camp. I'm not sure which camp this is. I want to say maybe it's Melau, but I could be wrong. Nonetheless, you can just see how the houses are all very closely packed together. People don't have a lot of space for themselves, and so if someone gets sick in this environment, it's really difficult to practice social distancing. And one consideration is the fact that a lot of these homes in the refugee camps, they share outhouses. And so if you're sharing an outhouse, that's something that like multiple households are going to be using at the same time. So there's no way to practice safe social distancing in that circumstance. Next, a lot of these places lack running water, and so that makes hygiene difficult. Not only do they lack running water, but you don't have soap. So no water, no soap. How are you going to clean yourself? And as you know, cleaning yourself is the #1 way that we can combat the coronavirus. Other things that make refugees vulnerable are lack of hospitals. Refugee camps often don't have hospitals nearby. Dadado was nice enough to share a story about Nupo. And Nupo is actually, it's kind of an interesting camp. I think Nupo is a camp that has been around for quite a long time. And so they have more, I guess, permanent structures. In the background of this picture, you can see that all the houses are kind of temporary structures. They've been built recently. They're not meant to stand for a very long time. But in Nupo, I believe I was reading about it, that they have bricks that are buildings that are made with bricks, or buildings that are made with cement. Just they're structures that have been that were intended to stick around for a longer time. And Dadado said that there was even a hospital nearby Nupo with Karen workers and doctors there. But in general, if you're at a refugee camp, you're not going to be close to a hospital. So lack of hospitals is one thing that's going to make Karen people, or anyone who's in a refugee camp, more vulnerable to the coronavirus. Lack of food, and this is kind of related to what I was talking about earlier in terms of lack of money, no food. Lack of reliable information, and so a lot of times refugee camps, they don't get timely updates on things that are happening all around them. And so if something like the coronavirus happened, maybe lots of people wouldn't be well educated or well informed about what the symptoms are or how they can protect themselves. So lack of reliable information can also make refugees more vulnerable to the disease. And this is related to our last word, which is marginalization. And this is kind of like a really big word, but the idea is that when you're marginalized, you are living at the very edge of society. So when it comes to, for example, Thailand, the Thai government is maybe going to be focused on its own people the most. Probably it's going to be focused on the wealthiest citizens the most. Then it'll probably be less focused on poor Thai people. And then probably the last people that the Thai government is going to be concerned with are the Karen refugees that are living on its borders. So all these things combined make Karen people, not just Karen people, but other refugees. It just makes refugees very vulnerable when it comes to the coronavirus. And I'm not sure exactly which camp this is, but this is just a picture of a Karen refugee camp. You can see how cramped and crowded the houses are, and I don't need to explain this. Most of you have come from these places, so you should know about it. But nonetheless, you can see how the houses are very cramped and crowded, how people are packed onto the streets, how the streets aren't paved, it's muddy there, so perhaps it's easier for viruses to spread because there's not running water or soap for people who are living there. Now I just want to take a minute to, I guess, provide some updates that I heard from some of the 9th graders about the coronavirus in refugee camps. And so I'll begin by talking about Melaun. And so far there haven't been any cases of the coronavirus reported there yet. However, in Bekla or Mela camp, apparently the coronavirus is there right now. And so because of all the factors that we talked about, I'm afraid that those people there are going to be much more vulnerable to the coronavirus. I'm not sure about what's happening at Nupo, and I don't have any information about Meramo or Umpia. So if you have any information from these camps, that would be great if you could share them. Hopefully we can, I guess, share and exchange information in this classroom as well. I know that's something that we usually do kind of informally with ourselves when we're at school, but since we're not at school right now, we're all doing distance learning, maybe we don't have that opportunity to exchange information like we used to. Lastly, I wanted to mention a place in Mogadishu called Nabadun, which is a refugee camp, and apparently the coronavirus is there as well. And so we can see two different places where we have refugees and we have the coronavirus, and it seems like those people are going to be much more vulnerable to what happens. All we can do is hope for the best. So that wraps up our class for today. I think I mentioned to you, I don't want you to spend all of your time in front of the computer. Your homework is very simple. It's just to complete the entrance task. Talk about maybe something that you fear in respect to the coronavirus, and how you manage those fears, how you deal with those fears. If you have any questions, please send me an email, sjkwok@sejongacademy.org. I also have office hours from 9:30 to 10:30 every day. And lastly, I did want to repeat that we will have a live teaching session this Thursday at 1:45 until 2:35. So at that time, please make sure that you are online. I'll send a Google Meet to all of you so that you will have that information as well. Take care. Thank you for sharing your writing. It was great. If you haven't finished your writing about coronavirus and refugees, please make sure you do that as well. Okay, peace.